Hello, my internet friends. Welcome to the Rigel Show. We're coming to you live from Austin, Texas, in my backyard, inside of my Earth Dome, also known as my mystical driftwood fort on the sandy beach of the cosmic navel, where song runs through all of reality. Okay, I did want to be in a boy band for like most of my life. Maybe I still do. Okay. This space is a playful Theotokian riparian zone that seeks to integrate traditional values, modern values, progressive postmodern values, and that which is emerging on the horizon, on the bleeding edge of the evolution of culture and consciousness, postmodern values. This is a place where opposites meet and merge, like two pieces of metal heating up in a flame and fusing together as one beautiful, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, sculpture. Okay? Today, I am going to enter the cosmic navel by playing a little tune as folks kind of trickle in here. I already have Terry hanging out in the waiting room. If you want to come hang out in the waiting room too while I play my little tune, you're more than welcome to. Just click the little link in the chat. Also, if you want a little reminder, a gentle reminder email from me, from my personal email, Gmail, just click the link in the description and you can sign up to my little list. Just send out on the day of or the day before, depending on how on the ball I am. So, all right, we're going to get started with a little music. I'm going to play a cover song, which I've not done yet in a live stream. And I don't know if my channel will get docked for that, or if maybe they'll ask me to take the video down or edit out that section, edit out the song. So we're just going to kind of enter in open palmed, but I'm going to bring my keys to the stage, and I'm going to do a little test here, see if I can hear myself, because this is where things... Morning, Sherry! See if I can hear myself. Do like a long chord. Because this is where things... Morning, Sherry! See if I can hear myself. Do like a long chord. Yeah, okay. You got to do these audio tests because this is where I consistently fall down on the job. So... all right, I'm going to play a little tune for you. It's called Your Mind is on Vacation and Your Mouth is Working Overtime by Mose Allison. This song, As I Have Aged, it's one of the first songs I ever learned to play and sing together publicly. As I have aged, it's begun to sting a little bit more. Okay, so here we go. You're sitting there yakking right in my face, coming on exactly like you own the place. You know if silence was golden, you couldn't raise a dime, because your mind is on vacation and your mouth is working overtime. You're quoting figures and dropping names. You're telling stories and playing games. You're over laughing when things ain't funny. You're trying to sound like you don't need money. You know if talking was criminal, you lead a life of crime. Because your mind is on vacation and your mouth is working overtime. life is short, talk is cheap. Don't be making promises you can't keep. If you don't like the song I'm singing, just grin and bear it. All I can say is that this shoe fits and wear it. If you must keep on talking, please try and make it right. Because your mind is on vacation and your mouth is working overtime. Because your mind is on vacation and your mouth is working overtime. All right. Okay, I'm gonna take my fingers off the stage and bring Terry on stage. Terry, nice to see you.
Great to be here.
Just a little side note about that song. That's kind of the song that got me playing and singing at the same time. I was like a piano player up to that point, and then it was actually my best friend in high school jazz band. He volunteered me to sing 8 bars of Frosty the Snowman. That our band, we would play Frosty the Snowman every winter concert, and someone in the band had to sing these 8 bars. And he volunteered me. He was like, Rigel will sing it. And I was like, no. And then I sang it, and then it went over pretty good. And then we started learning tunes together. And this is one of the first things we learned was your mind is on vacation and your mouth is working overtime. I remember the place I learned it. And it's one of these songs that just keeps giving.
Well, I can't think of anything more appropriate for our times.
Amen, Terry.
Yeah.
Oh man. So what's
guilty?
I know. I'm like, I want to point the finger at everybody else, but I'm kind of like, this is right down on the bullseye with me. So what's bubbling up for you today, Terry?
Well, I brought you 2 things for starters.
Okay.
One is I was able to have a private hour with Jordan Hall in Black Mountain last Sunday.
Wow.
And he said something interesting that used the term icon in a way that made me think I needed to check with people who know more about that term than I do. So I want to ask about that.
Okay.
And also I want to invite everybody to my live Q&A with my co-author on Thursday.
Right on.
I would especially like to have some people that are in your audience because I know they would ask great questions of Bishop Thomas.
Well, you came to the right place because I have a huge reach. I mean, we're sitting at 3 live watchers. So if you're out there, please just say hello in the comments. Sherry, you're welcome to jump on here. Anyone else? Jump on. Terry, let's just get this out of the way. How do people find you?
At isn'tthatbad.net.
Okay, I'm just going to throw that in the chat. Isn't that, so that's 2 T's in a row. Like,
Yep.
Isn't that bad.net. Okay.
Yeah, you'll find the event registration right at the top of the page.
Okay. Sherry.
Morning.
So good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Okay, so Terry has some things to say about her conversation with Jordan Hall and icons. What's kind of bubbling up for you?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were asking Terry about her.
Oh no, we can look. This is very flex flow here. Like we can kind of see what's bubbling up from everybody, and then like jump into one topic.
I'm just here for
style.
it, Rigel.
Wow, Sherry, you are like an ocean of support. Do you know that?
That's what I
You're
do.
you're not like an ocean of support. You are an ocean of support. Let's get dialed into the metaphor here. Hey, Mandy. It never
Yeah, too
fails. I am
bad
too
she's
busy to jump
Mandy.
on, but hello. Ah, one of
She's
these
a
days.
mom. She's a
Yeah,
mom. She's a
I
busy
get it.
mom.
Try
Yeah.
not to cuss too much today.
I don't know what's bubbling up for me. I'm gonna have to let that sit for a minute because
Yeah.
I was just rushing around and then I was like, oh my God, it's 9:30.
Yeah.
It's the bewitching hour. Or
Yeah.
I heard an old blooper once on this was the days when people bought blooper records. I'm sure Terry remembers the blooper records, TV blooper records. And my aunt had a bunch of them. And there was one on there where I think it was in sometime, when people hunkered around the radios for the radio story hours. And the woman says, and now it's time for the wee bitching hour. That one always stuck with me. I thought,
That
oh yeah.
sounds good.
So here we are at the wee bitching hour, Rigel.
Wee bitching hour.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, I kind of want to hear what Terry has to say.
Yeah, me too.
But before I do, I want to just acknowledge that there is a higher ratio of men to women here. And I feel, is this like a first on a TLC channel?
You mean the other way around? Higher ratio.
Of women to men. I'm probably so like biased. I can't even like get the numbers right.
Yeah, I was thinking, you must think very highly of yourself.
I actually do. And I feel like that is, I could count. I mean, technically I count as like 2 or 3 people. That's just true. From pure volume.
That was my second thought.
Well, I am just barely beginning to find my way around the flotilla. And my initial sense is that your channel would appeal more to women generally because of the focus on beauty. And I say that particularly, Sherry, I found your video about how you were looking for less politics, less cultural commentary, less theology, I think. And therefore, Rigel's channel seemed to be the natural spot. And much as I love those things also, I kind of feel the same way about that.
I would also add that creativity is a huge feminine archetype.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Okay. Terry, why don't you introduce us to your ideas? Tell us a little bit about your conversation with Jordan Green, right? Green Hall. Sorry, yeah. There's like 2 names behind the Jordan. I've always wanted to have a conversation with him, but it just didn't happen at Midwest Touring. So, Cody, get in here, buddy.
Yeah, you're gonna have to even the odds here for
yeah, you have to even the odds.
There we go.
All right, take it away, Terry.
So I've really been fascinated with Jordan Hall. I was aware of him before his Christian conversion through Rebel Wisdom, mostly his Game B work. But I really got interested with his conversion because of the unique way that he presents it. On the one hand, conceptual, and on the other hand, very grounded. So I have been, because of my role in the Rebel Wisdom successor community, Emergent Commons, I've had a couple of opportunities to have one-on-one conversations with him at his home in Black Mountain, or near his home in Black Mountain. One of which was this past weekend, where we were celebrating the 1-year anniversary of having been stuck in Hurricane Helene when I had taken a group of people down there for a retreat. So this time, my main question to him had to do, it's the universalist question, and the flavor of it was, if someone is having a personal Jesus experience, is that really different from having a personal experience of Krishna or Buddha or you name it? And the thing he said, I only understand about 30% of what Jordan Hall says, but the thing he said that really struck me was, any relationship you have is a relationship with Jesus. If you have it with your friend, what have you. So if you have a relationship with Zeus, that's a relationship with Jesus up the stack. The question is how far up the stack? I may not have that languaging quite right. And then he said, it depends on whether you're holding Zeus as an idol or an icon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think I know what he meant by that. But I'd like to hear from people who know more about
I want to hear from
icons than I
Sherry.
do.
Sherry, you say it, Sherry.
Okay. A long time ago, I had this realization. And actually, Father Josiah Trenham had a conversation with Tucker Carlson.
Oh, God, I'm like bristling all over, but I'm just going to sit with this discomfort, Sherry.
Just
thank you.
Calm your soul. Calm your soul. About Charlie Kirk and, just the situation everyone finds themselves in, right? And they were talking about the 40 days of mourning in the Orthodox tradition and what it's for. Anyway, they were just rambling along. And at one point, Father Trenham talked about secular society. And he said, secular society is not pagan. That is an insult to paganism. And I'm like, preach. Okay, so here's my realization. Because I think we were talking about, I was in a conversation with some people and we were talking about idols or something. I can't remember what it was. And I'm like, what is an idol? Like, because a lot of Protestants have trouble with icons and call them idols, okay? Something that you're looking at, right? So I was imagining, some Nordic farmer, in the 2nd century or the 1st century or whatever, getting up in the morning, he's brought his harvest in. His wife has a healthy baby boy. She didn't die. The baby didn't die. His cow is milking. There's still grass and it's fall. It looks like the weather's going to hold out longer than expected. Winter's not yet coming. He gets up in the morning and he says, man, I am so grateful. And he looks out on creation, right? But here's the deal. He needs a face. He needs something to be grateful to. And so out of this overwhelming gratefulness, he picks up a stick and he carves this face into it. But this face is not any one thing. And he knows that. Because not any one thing got him to the day that he's now experiencing. Okay? But he looks at that face, and that face represents everything that he's grateful for. And he gives thanks to the face. The problem arrives when he stops looking beyond the face. Okay? When the face is just a face, right? Jesus talks about himself as he says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. What does that mean? The Father is ineffable. So that also means that he is ineffable, but he has a face. And we know this from just the three of us in this conversation. I can't say who you are, Rigel. You can't say who I am. I can't say who Terry is. And, and we could go around and around with that, right? So, but we are speaking to each other face to face. Okay? We are, and, just bear with me on this, the way, the truth, and the life. The person, I am the way, the truth, and the life. But that doesn't tell us anything about me, right? It just tells us that whatever that is way bigger and way beyond what we see with our eyes, right? So Father Josiah Trenholm said in that conversation to Tucker, at least the pagan knew that there was a divine transcendence, something that was above him, right? And where we fall into the error of idolatry, and Christians do the same thing, because it's a human tendency, is where we become transactional with a piece of wood. That's what it is. We say, hey, you. Well, this is nothing, because behind it is everything. And so what that Nordic farmer is doing is finding something that he can direct his attention to in order to give proper thanks to everything. Mm-hmm. That's how I see icons in the Orthodox Church. I can direct my attention to the Theotokos. I can direct my attention to Saint Seraphim, and I can be grateful for everything, right? Because I'm going to pray the Trisagion, right? And I'm just trying to remember it. I'm going to say, come on, help me out here.
Oh, Roger. Heavenly King, O Comforter, the
Spirit
of
truth, everywhere present and filling all things.
That's a bomb. That is a bomb of a statement right there. Thank you, Sherry. Dang it. Mm-hmm. Hey, Luke, glad you're here with us.
That kind of fits my sense. I want to hear what Rigel thinks, but I kind of had a sense that he was referring to, am I looking at or am I looking through?
I think you're doing well. I would say it's not a binary. It's both. I just know this from my own veneration of icons and saints. I am looking at them and through them and through their eyes. Mm. Right?
Yeah. That's really beautiful, Jerry. I haven't really thought about it that deeply, but I really resonate with this kind of the both andness of, like, when I'm talking to you, I'm like talking at your face that's on my screen through these pixels, but it's like it's almost like your incarnation of the kind of eternal crazy spark of I am that is Sherry. It's like condensed into this little word of a incarnate flesh thing. A very beautiful flesh thing, Sherry. But
Bulgakov calls every person a world. Mm-hmm. We are worlds. And it's very, very true, right? I mean, remember all your little graphics for your song?
Yeah.
There's a lot of little worlds, right? Like bumping up against each other. And I think what makes me sad is when we fail to explore those. Like every world is a frontier. Every new world is a frontier, right? I used to have this image in my mind when I first joined the Discord, because I've never had social media. I still don't have social media. Mm-hmm. But what it felt to me like was that every person, like, if I could draw, I wish I could draw. If I could draw, I would draw all these heads with little doors in the side of them. And I could approach one, I could open the door, I could go in, I could look around, I could pick things off the shelf and say, wow, this is really beautiful. I think I'm going to take this and stick it in my pocket, and go out, close the door, and then go to the next one, and that's what I was seeing at the time. That was a very naive kind of like picture of how I was perceiving this place where people were sharing ideas and talking, right? But I think in images. So that's how I made that, you know, and then of course, then I started hearing later on, and, you know, in the journey was like collective consciousness and morphic fields and, you know, all the rest of it. Right. Which I actually still prefer my own little graphic because it's, I don't know, it's kind of cute.
Yeah. There's another saying in the Orthodox Church, not to like be hyper Orthodox here, but it's just kind of where this goes sometimes, is I don't know who said this, but like every person is a living icon.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah.
And
yeah, because that's, I mean, that's happens in the liturgy. I've only been to 3, but it's my favorite part.
yeah.
The priest
And
comes out and he senses all the icons in the church, and then the congregation turns and he walks through and he senses all the people because they are also living icons.
Yeah.
That seems to line up with Jordan saying every relationship is a relationship with Jesus.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Mandy says there is a show on Netflix where magic keys allow people to do.
Oh, really?
That Sherry walk into someone's mind self weird.
I don't watch Netflix either. So.
Well, so there's another icon. I don't know if this is an icon, but it's a blessed rock.
Yes.
That is. This is the internet that about Terry, you don't know about this, but about 1.5 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, I was trying to figure out how to sprinkle holy water on the internet, because that's what we do in the Orthodox Church is we like sprinkle water on stuff and make it holy. And I was like, internet could use a little bit of this holy water. So I drew kind of an icon of the internet. I don't know. I'm proposing this. Okay. And I took it to be blessed, and my priest like looked at it and he kind of paused. I asked one priest, our head priest, like if I could get this blessed. And he was like, yes, but you can never throw it away. So then I took it over to the other priest who was doing the blessings, and he just blessed the shit out of it. And it was a pretty fun moment. But okay, so I'm kind of wondering if the lurking to breaking the fourth wall, the chat, the internet, this whole process from going out of the lurk into the chat, interacting with a host, then coming on screen, breaking the fourth wall, then meeting in real life. If there is some icon that is actually a true icon that's like leading in this process from glory to glory into deeper relationship, like I don't know how to make an icon out of that, but it feels like there is something real in this like unreal space that we're, existing in together. Cody flicked in for a second and then flicked out. Just like an angel, Cody. It's like I saw you out of the corner of my eye, but was it you? I don't know. What do y'all think about how to make an icon out of the internet, or make an internet icon?
I love the idea.
Okay. Oh, so here's one detail. Here's one detail. This is very important, because I think what makes an icon is a person, right? You can't have an icon of like a rock, but you can have, I think, an icon of a person. And so on this rock, I tried to represent like, oh, here we go. Sorry. See how there's like above internet there's like a little dot with a halo around it. I mean, the internet is basically like made up of people. The internet wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the cloud of witnesses like Cody flicking in and flicking out and then back in.
Can I show you this?
Yeah, share it. Oh, sweet. Dude, that is freaking awesome. Is that like a toroidal structure superimposed on a tree fractal?
See the nodes in the network?
Whoa.
Oh my gosh.
There's my map of the TLC.
Yeah.
It's a very ancient, it's a tree of life. It's Indra's net. I was in a hippie bookstore in Coombs, BC, which is on Vancouver Island.
Yeah.
And that was, I bought a bunch of books, and then I was walking out and I went, and I came back and I said, "Is that for sale?" And she goes, "Oh yeah, that's been hanging in the window forever. I can't sell it." She goes, "I'll give it to you for really cheap."
Oh my God, really?
And I said, "Okay, great." And then she goes, I said, "Do you know what it is?" She goes, "No." I said, "It's Indra's net." But it's like it's a varied version of Indra's net.
I'm not familiar with Indra's net.
Wikipedia. Get Wikipedia.
Okay.
So all Indra's net is like every intersection has these little gems or gemstones in Indra's net. I'm not going to explain this very well because it's been a while.
Yep.
And they reflect, right?
No way.
They reflect. So it's indicative of just the human as being, the human beings as being, right? As a one thing.
It is it is a metaphor for the fundamental interconnectedness and interdependence of all things. Who fillest everywhere present and fillest all things.
Right. And I was talking to her about this, and she was just like listening. I did a better job of it at the time because I think I was just dealing with Indra's net at the time and reading about it. And then I said, "Well, thanks so much," and then I was walking out and she goes, "Wait." I said, "What?" She goes, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm just a girl talking to a girl in a bookstore." Notting Hill. You remember Notting Hill?
Oh. I just want to welcome Cody to the stage. Cody, thanks for balancing out this this male-female polarity, because I was feeling very intimidated and just like backed up against the wall, and now things are finally fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Perfect.
All right, perfect. Well, glad to balance things out. But I had to transition outside to be able to jump on. And the last thing that I was hearing before the whole, what did you call it? The Indra's tree or something like that?
Indra's net.
Indra's net. Sorry. You were talking about the difference of like icon and idol. And I don't know if any of you listened to the J.D. Lionheart and Jordan Daniel Wood conversation on Grail Country with Nate.
I'm halfway through now. Loving that. Oh
First of all, I'm just going to echo what Luke already said. After listening to that, I need intellectual Gatorade. I just feel completely depleted of all nutrients to sustain myself after having to listen and re-listen. And it was a great talk, though. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. But this analogy of like this illustration of the pagan needing a face kind of tied into that conversation where, JD and Jordan are talking about the personal being a necessity for our ability to relate to God, because that's exactly how God is. And, he's relational and personal to himself. So therefore, necessarily, he's relational and personal to us. And he comes to give us in personhood, in humanity, a face. But to Sherry's point, it's not just contained in the image, it's beyond the image too. It made me think of something that I was reading this week about the parables A friend and mine we've been looking at the lectionary this week about the parable of the dishonest manager in Luke 16. Looking at the parables made me pick up a book I've been needing to read for a while. It's Robert Farr Capon. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but he has a book called Kingdom, Grace, Judgment, Vindication, Paradox, and Outrage in the Parables of Jesus. That's the subtitle. And he talks about the parable of the sower. In the parable of the sower, it's my wife and I were talking about this morning. The typical evangelical interpretation is God is the sower, or Jesus is the sower, and he sows all the seed, and wherever it lands, that's sort of the condition of your Christianity, so to speak, or not being a real Christian,
or your predestination.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Yeah. You could go into either lane and you'd be on the same highway for sure. But I haven't thought about it that way in a long time. I once did, but Capon offers that the interpretation for what the seed is the word of God, and it's something that has been sown by the Father everywhere in all of the world before the incarnation. And Jesus is telling this parable so the disciples and the listeners around him, the ones who have ears to hear, understand that the word of God has been in all of these places and is this personal word that has come to them. And Capon, in his own summary, says, often what we're doing is we're trying to bring the personal to people, but it's only our personal face. It's only the face that we are accustomed to, and the face that, going back to that illustration, the face that we carve to give ourselves something tangible, something personal, the personhood. And the word of God has been personal everywhere. And Capon, kind of gives a critique that what evangelicals try to do, and I would agree with this, is bring that person to people, like trying to get Jesus into people, trying to get them to see who Jesus is by our own lens, when all we need to be doing is speaking about the person who has already been planted in that community, in that culture. The good news is already there. We just have to speak to the good news of Christ in the way that he has planted himself for their need, for their understanding, for their revelation. And suddenly it takes a lot of that wrestling and that mental gymnastic work of trying to give people a Jesus that they don't even understand. Like the pagan, he didn't understand, who he was worshiping, but he needed something in a person or the figure of a person to give him a way to personalize it. And Capon is speaking to the fact that the word of God has already personalized himself in every point of history and every culture. And when the time is right, then it's time for harvest. Then it's time to go out and speak to the good news that's already been planted. So I just wanted to share that.
It's funny that you mentioned the good news. I was having a conversation with a friend this morning, and he started out the conversation with talking about the state that a lot of people find themselves in, where they most people live beyond their means. So they are in some kind of indebtedness, right? Somehow, and here, I never said this to him, but I remember watching Father of the Bride, the first with Steve Martin and Martin Short. And I remember thinking, oh no, everyone is going to think that this is how you have to do a wedding. and live in the world. And like, this is the average family. These people were not the average family, but they made it seem like an average family, right? And it seems like ever since then, weddings have cost like $50,000, and it's just stupid. So anyway, so he just was, we were just casually talking to each other, and he was talking about this indebtedness and how people try to live beyond their means and what he's doing in his life, and then he kind of wound his way into this talking about the good news. And he always wondered what that meant to people. He said, nobody ever told me what it was. They just talked about it, and because it's kind of like an evangelical phrase, right? We have to preach the good news, And I like to watch the pattern of thinking, because I think tangentially, and I think we all do. And so these things, like they very subconsciously connect to each other. And I'm like, that's interesting that he would start talking about debt, and then he would go to good news. And then my logical conclusion was, the good news for most evangelical Christians is that their debt has been paid by someone else. Okay. And they're like, okay, well, I might not get out of it in this life, but in the afterlife, it's all taken care of. Right? Isn't that an interesting, like, I just had to throw that out there. Because it was kind of neat to see how his thoughts, they seemed random and disconnected, but I don't
Yeah.
Indra's net there.
It's interesting. I mean, like, it's like everyone's good news is a little bit different.
Sure.
I just want to say, Ron, I see you and I feel your footsteps on the pathways of my heart.
I also wanted to mention really quickly, just before we get too far away from it, when Terry, when you were talking about what Jordan said, I think for a lot of Christians, that would just seem like completely heretical to say that Zeus is Christ. But if you look at that through, I mean, there's a few things about that, but just to say that if there is only Christ, right? Like that's essentially what Jordan is saying. There is only Christ. And Rudolf Steiner calls it Christ consciousness, which might be a little more accessible to some people, right? So there's a consciousness, a Christ consciousness. And then the Martin Shaw helped me understand this really well, was that we've denatured most things. So when the Vikings, let's say, talked about Thor, they weren't talking about the god of thunder. They were talking about thunder. Thunder and Thor were the same thing. They weren't. Thunder was not abstracted out to be a separate entity. So when they heard thunder, they heard Thor. Okay. And then Cody, what you were talking about, and I think this is all connected, is you're talking about word made flesh. Okay. So there, what I've noticed with a lot of Christians is, or a lot of religions, actually, not just Christianity, is that what tends to happen is they, in their pursuit of unity, they collapse the particular into the unity. And what happens when that happens is you get uniformity. Literally, you get uniforms. Everybody looks the same. Okay. And that helps a lot because we're tribal, so we can pick out our people, right? We can pick them out of the crowd from a distance. But what Scripture is doing is it's pouring unity into the particular. That's the word made flesh. That's right. Jesus being divine. That, so and what that does is preserve the particular.
Very true.
Yes. Yeah, I do really relate to that. And I also want to tie that back to the parable that Cody was talking about, which coincidentally is on my mind because somebody featured it in who's doing this little zine or the zine that's been coming
I think
out.
that's Skankenstein.
Oh, okay. He ended with that same parable, and it added the idea that we're continually growing. Not only are we individual, but we're also each growing and morphing. Something about how Jesus said, don't cut out the weeds now, wait until later, because you may not be able to tell. You cannot tell looking now, in essence, where someone is growing or where they're becoming. So somebody looks like a heretic to you now, but you don't know where they are in their journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, or maybe the weeds are in you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, yes,
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when I was in my Baptist-y days, we would practice this thing called Way of the Master. It was a way of evangelizing people, where you would ask them questions about, what would happen when they died and what they think would happen. And then you would try to prick their conscience by getting them to think about, whether or not they've lied or done things that they're supposed to do in life. And now how do you feel? And looking back on it, it feels like, hey, Joy, nice to see you.
Yay, Joy.
It felt like what was happening is we were reformatting their hard drive to give them good news that only works or maybe it's creating a soil composition that only grows this type of fruit. Whereas what Cody was talking about is there's this other option of actually meeting every person where they're at. And the word that comes to mind is kenosis, the self-emptying that Christ, does in this process of incarnation from being eternal to temporal. I have the chance to do that with every single person that I meet in my life, and be the good news in a way that is super visceral to their current moment. And where that shows up for me is when I'm being kind of vulnerable with someone and I share something that maybe I'm really ashamed of, and they respond with love. And sometimes that's my wife, sometimes that's, a friend. And that is resurrection energy for me.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which is always preceded by death.
Yeah.
And hell.
Nice.
But yeah, I think, but here's the thing. I also love what I think Skankenstein, also Matt, was talking about in this progression, this developmental path that we're all on, where, good news may come to us in one format in one part of our life. And then later in life, we might be that was good news, man, that is so shallow or whatever. But we're all on this journey, different parts of the journey, different parts of the path.
Yeah.
Okay. Stick a fork in me.
No, that was good.
Yeah. Speaking about the parables a little bit more, the parable of the dishonest manager is followed up lastly after the parables of the lost sheep, the lost coin, the prodigal son. And then Jesus tells this parable in Luke 16 about the dishonest manager. And it's I think that we would hit, or we would say Jesus hits the home run in the prodigal son. But I think maybe I'm starting to see the last running in, the last home plate, crossing is with the dishonest manager, because again, as a evangelical in recovery, I look at all these things that I used to interpret, and like I said last stream, I'm trying to face the past, the present, and what's coming, in a light that I don't want to avoid how I used to see things. I want them to be healed. And this week, that same friend and I who've been talking about this parable, we've been approaching it every day, looking at it from a lens that would be healing. He's just doing it with me. He doesn't have the same methodology that I do. In fact, our interpretations couldn't be more different, but we're doing it together. And the good news for this parable for me has been in the discovery that the dishonest manager is not being commended for his dishonesty. He's being commended for his shrewdness, despite his dishonesty. He puts himself at the mercy of both master and debtor. He is right in the middle of where I think Jesus is trying to drive the heart of where the most important position to be in, and it's locked in merciful need. There is no greater position to be in than a man who knows what he is, knows what he's doing, but knows more than anything that he needs the grace of everyone around him. Inadvertently, you could interpret it to say like his own stance of having the need of mercy reflects positively towards the master, right? It makes the master look benevolent because the debts have decreased for those who are in debt. It makes the debtors look more merciful because they've been shown mercy. Now they can dispense it themselves. By this act, Jesus says, make use of or make friends with dishonest wealth. And like, what are we given except for dishonest wealth in the mercy of Christ? And in the very place that he puts himself in between the world and the Father, that's the same position as the dishonest manager. And that's a really scandalous thing to say. People hear that and they're like, no. We have to condemn what is wrong. We have to get our ledgers and accounts. We have to make the book accurate, and I think that's where he comes in at the end and says, you can't serve God and mammon. You can't have a ledger that is perfect and serve God in this particular sense.
What comes to my mind when you're talking about this is these are the wrenches that I love that Scripture throws at us. It throws us wrenches, right? And we have this Kantian idea that we cannot lie, we cannot steal, we cannot, right? And I think a really good image to think of in regards to that parable, Cody, is how did David and Bathsheba give us Solomon? Right?
Yeah, Mandy, you're right. Chris, I don't know who speaks more coherently just about the parables than Chris. And Sherry, you're right. Like it is just in the very psychology that we are determined to be self-righteous that prevents us from placing ourselves in the absolute necessity of needing grace. And the farther we go outside of the bounds of that helplessness, like the more we deceive ourselves, and our hearts can fall into that Jacob-like territory, right? That we want to grasp on the things that we think we have a handle on or understand in the way that God understands them. But God simply tells us to rely on what he has done, see the word made flesh in the places that he has already sown the word, and that's good news.
Yeah.
It is good news to be forgiven.
Right.
It reminds me of the conversation that just happened between Ezra Klein and Ben Shapiro. Did anyone watch that?
No.
Or listen to that? Ezra Klein is podcaster for New York Times. He's kind of like center left, if you want to like categorize him that way. And Ben Shapiro is like pretty far right. And like according to their tribal boundaries, they shouldn't be having a conversation together. Like they're not supposed to talk to each other. But Ezra's been stepping outside of his tribal boundaries, and he got in a lot of hot water in this conversation. And I've had some conversations about it with my more left-leaning friends, and they felt like Ezra didn't like push back hard enough on some of these points where he was asking a pointed question, and Ben Shapiro kind of like did an end run around and didn't really answer the question or whatever. But I feel like what ended up happening is by the end of it, there was a little bit of a friendship between them that wouldn't have existed if he had stopped at the edge of his tribal balance sheet and was like, nope, we can't actually continue this conversation because you just crossed a line that's like unforgivable. But he just had the grace to like see past it and then get to a point in the conversation where maybe another conversation could be possible in the future. And I think there's this like, I can't remember how this relates to what you were saying, Cody, but it just popped up while you were talking. So I apologize if I totally diverted things.
Well, I'll jump on your diversion, Rigel, to say the most beautiful thing I have seen this week is that 20-minute clip of a woman having a conversation with Charlie Kirk. Have you guys seen this where she's moderately liberal and they actually have a conversation? And there are thousands of comments and everybody says, couldn't we just see this all the time? Couldn't somebody just do this full time?
Yeah.
And the hunger for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, that's because we're not binary. As a person, I am both left-leaning and right-leaning, if you want to call it that. Okay.
Yeah.
We're not binary. So we have to be able to have conversations like that because there will always be points of agreement and there will always be points of disagreement, right? But that's something I feel like when I was a kid, that was just a given. It was a given that you weren't going to agree with everyone, but you could agree on many things. And that was where the focus was. Now the focus is just on the disagreement. And this is that image that I was just talking about where, everyone's trying to collapse the particular into the unity.
Come on.
And they all start looking like each other, literally. And they wear uniforms, literally. Okay. I mean, when you see that kind of thing going on, you're like, okay, they got it ass backwards here. Like anyone doing that.
Yeah. But okay, so I want to like steel man the collapsing the particular in the unity just to give voice to that person who's not in the room. Because that person is me. Like there's a part of me that needs some simplicity and like a little bit less cognitive dissonance. And I feel like there is I don't know. Like I
Wait a minute. I have to ask you a question.
Say it.
I thought you loved dissonance.
No, I do. No, I'm steel manning a part
I've
of
been around
myself.
here long enough.
Yeah. So there's a part of me that collapses the particular into the unity as survival mechanism, and that is in a perichoretic dance with like hyper, let's keep everything in kind of this paradoxical dance, which that's really my preference, but it's not my preference when I'm like trying to fall asleep and like I want my TV show to have like a good guy and a bad guy, and it's like the good guy always wins, and it's not a part of like I don't have to face myself.
That's not collapsing the particular into the unity.
Really?
No, collapsing the particular into the unity is military parades. Okay? Just watch them. China, Russia, the United States, wherever. They're all marching in order, and everybody's steps are going, it's lockstep. That's collapsing the particular into unity. That's what
I think that's one way you can collapse the particular into the unity. But fractally shows up in other ways.
Okay, well, you have to convince me. And then collapsing the unity into the particular, God in man, right? God became man so that man can become God. That looks like a forest.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I'm understanding this. So I think that we're like you're having an idea that I don't. You'll have to.
I'm having a partial idea that is maybe not even worth having, but
no, I want to hear it. Like I'm trying to understand when you said you just at the end of the day want to watch your TV show and everything needs to be simple. How is that collapsing the particular into the unity for you?
And I'm going to add, are you paraphrasing my favorite ever line from Northern Exposure, that you must love everyone, but you can't hang out with 6 billion people?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let me try to answer Sherry's question, because this has taken me into a realm of deeper thought, which I'm not used to.
Go easy on yourself.
Yeah. I mean, so the unity that I see in that situation is that there is like kind of a right way that the world, like this hyper-ordered way that the universe works. And in that hyper-ordered way, there is good guys and there's bad guys, and the good guys always win by the end of the TV show.
Okay,
and
so you're talking
now
about
like
morality.
Maybe I'm talking about morality.
I think so.
Okay.
Good and evil.
Yeah, maybe so.
Okay.
But there's like in that, like that morality is somehow representative of ultimate reality, which I would call the unity. But maybe that's not. Maybe that's a stretch.
Yeah.
And then and so I don't know, Sherry.
Well, so if you think about collapsing the unity into the particular, you get God's speech in the book of Job, where he says, look at the ostrich, how beautiful she is and how fast she can run, and how she just leaves her eggs out in the hot sun and the predators steal them all. She's stupid, but wow, can she run? And you go, what? Because the morality thing pops up, right? Morality is like that. That's not good. You can't leave undefended children to the elements and to predators. That's a bad mother. But God doesn't say that about her. Okay? Because she's part of a unity, right? That is so diverse that it looks immoral. This is really hard stuff. God, Job's friends say to him, God breaks the mouth of the lion and saves us from our enemies and blah, 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 and the wicked are suffering. They've got all this morality, right? This morality that dictates if you do bad things happen to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Job goes, well, wait a minute. Like, I'm looking at these wicked people and they are doing really well. You know, they're having children, their cows are fat, their babies are laughing, and everything's going. And his friends just become enraged because no matter what they're looking at, it's not that, because they have an idea in their head that wicked people suffer. And that's why you are suffering. And then in God's speech, God says to Job, I feed the lions. Okay, well, if you connect that back to the dialogue of God rips their mouths open, he's refuting that completely. And so does it look evil when a lion steals a 5-year-old from the banks of a river when his mother's washing clothes? Looks pretty damn evil. God says he feeds them. Like, I don't know. I'm not saying we have to make a decision about this, but all I'm saying is there are a lot of wrenches, just like Cody's parable. Here we got this guy. He's like, yeah, morally speaking, and that's always where we have our difficulties. We always have our difficulties on a moral plane, but morality changes. What was moral in ancient Greece is immoral today, right? Morality never, it's always changing. It's very relative, actually. Whereas God is constant. So, and you know, the reason I said, to me, collapsing the unity into the particular looks like the forest is because when you move into a forest and live in a forest, there are some things that go on in that forest that are really sad.
Mm-hmm.
Even just a tree falling down in the wind.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not fair. Took him 250 years to get that big. You know what I mean? Like, why is there fungus growing on that Douglas fir? It's going to kill it. We should wipe that out. Right?
Yeah.
Immoral. Anyway, I'm done my little rant.
Yeah. You know, Sherry, I feel like, you know, in Romans, I think it's Romans 11, where God, you know, consigns all to disobedience so that he may be merciful on all. And if we can't take the stance of placing ourselves in the position of the dishonest manager, in which it is possible that God has a different view of what is good despite us not being good. If he's consigned us to what we are, yet he commends things that are of himself within us, then I think that means, you know, as another way to interpret that dishonest manager parable is something else I thought of, which is Jesus is the sign of the new creation, of new management, all of the shrewdness, but none of the dishonesty. And he's leading us in that direction. And that's where I'm thinking, you know, maybe that ties into like the unity pours into the particular. And that also perhaps bridges the gap with what Rigel is saying, is like, well, how do we know what the particular is if we don't have unity? And I do kind of see what he means about the dance or the waltz. Like there's a step, and then there's a step that corrects us back where we're supposed to be oriented. And God intends for us to be oriented that way.
Okay, so what was that second thing you said about how do we know what the particular is if we have no unity? I think let's all think about this and come back and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that if you have that kind of unity, the one that you can see, you've lost the particular. Because the demand on that person becomes that you be like me, right? You think like me, you talk like me, you act like me, and you agree with everything I say. That's called unity. And I don't think that's unity at all. Like, that's why I'm saying unity, the particular, I mean, unity dropped into the particular is an ecosystem. It's diversity that enables life to flourish, right? And life flourishes actually in these natural ecosystems, flourishes in the edge communities. It flourishes in riparian zones where field meets forest, right? So I personally have never loved when people talk about Christians needing to be unified. The only nudge I ever get about that from the Holy Spirit is babble.
Yeah. So I just to clarify, the only unity I see from what Scripture speaks to, what Paul is saying, and what Jesus is teaching in these parables is the only unity there is in the being consigned to disobedience, so that we may see Him more clearly.
Yeah, but sorry to interrupt you, but I want to get this out, and then I'll just listen a minute. Sure. Isn't the good news? This is what I think the good news means: that we are good. That's the good news, right? You know, we say, why do bad things happen to good people? But what if we said, why do good people do bad things, and why do bad people do good things? Because this is the contention that is happening in the book of Job, right? So, and I think what Jesus comes to say, because he says that he came to reveal the Father. That's our unity right there. We are sons and daughters of God, okay? And he loves us. That's what a good father does. And that unifies us as a family. That's it. That's the good news. You know what I mean? In my opinion. Anyway.
Yeah. I agree. And that I was trying to maybe like put some paths out to the bridges here. And, you know, I think that the unity that's deceptive is that we stand righteous within our own individualism of self-righteousness. Like that's never unity. That's a shadow. That's a shadow in the being of Jesus being raised up on the cross. Like that just casts shadow. But the light is like where he is. The light is what comes from that event. And that's how God is merciful upon all. Looking at the parables, not everyone can hear the good news. And in fact, in the parable of the sower, Capon says that the explanation that Jesus gives the disciples of the parable of the sower, because they asked for it, just makes the parable more confusing for the disciples. If they had the ear to hear, if they could understand what he's saying from the parable itself, they would have understood it more, but they wanted an explanation. Right. I think the unity that we have, the false unity, the shadow unity, is a step in the dance, because we're already told and we're already made aware that disobedience is something that God uses, the behovely sin that Julian of Norwich talks about, so that we can be positioned in the dance rightly oriented towards himself. And I kind of see it as like God spinning us around, but he still has our hand in the spinning, right? And then every time we spin back toward him, we see him more and more clearly, for that is the particular in which our unity must pour into. We must become these vessels shaped by the potter, repaired, made whole, and then we can pour ourselves out for the other. We can pour ourselves out for God, and simply by placing ourselves in the position of the dishonest manager, in the position of total necessity for mercy.
I want to tie this back to iconography and drop a little kind of tidbit of information that may somehow relate to this whole dance between unity and distinction. So one interesting thing about many Orthodox icons is there's often some kind of break in reality within the icon that it's like by design to kind of make the viewer kind of realize that something beyond our concepts is happening. So like oftentimes it will be certain objects in the scene will be in reverse perspective. So you know how things are like further away, things are smaller, closer things are bigger. Well, it'll be like further away things will be bigger, and it's kind of like reversing the perspective. So like if things are too realistic, it starts to collapse into this unity that can feel a little bit like, you know, a military parade walking down the street in uniform. And so there's something about just having enough of a break of reality to kind of like season the unity that can just kind of turn into totalitarianism. I mean, I think part of what makes me like squirm a little bit at this idea of the unity collapsing into the particular is like either one collapsing into each other makes me feel like there's something's being lost in that. And it like I have this instinct to want to preserve the paradox, and that like the unity and this distinction need to be both separate but also both. I mean, the term we use in like Orthodox theology is perichoresis, which is the relationship between the persons of the Trinity that both preserves their unity and their distinction at the same time. It's basically just like shorthand for saying paradox. A paradox.
But I think that collapsing the unity into the particular is a paradox, because how do
Sherry, can you give me an example? Because I'm still not sure I know what you mean. Give me an example of collapsing unity into
Adam and Eve.
Wait, say that again?
Adam and Eve.
Oh.
They were one. They were one being, and then God took Eve out of Adam. They were unity, and then he divided them into two particular persons, and together they are unity. But the unity was collapsed into particularity. It was when I say collapsed, that's not negative for me. Collapsed means to fall into. The one falls into the many. This is Pentecost. Okay. It's the incarnation when God becomes man. Okay. So, and Barfield, I don't have the book here, but Barfield has this really great way of talking about how God becomes contained. So God's name in Hebrew is the tetragrammaton, which cannot be spoken. Okay. But it becomes contained in the word Israel. God's name becomes, it gets snuck in there. And Barfield has this line in Saving the Appearances that I love so much, because this is, for me, what I'm thinking about when the unity collapses into the particular. Because he says, every time the Israelite says his own name, he speaks the name of God. The name of God whispers and bubbles up from within him. And I think that that is a deliberate attempt of God to say that this is my temple. This is where I dwell, right? God in man. And so he snuck himself in their name. And when they spoke their name, his name came up from within them. Because they would, Tetragrammaton is Hashem, the one we cannot name, right? Which is true. You can't name God. Like that's another thing. I tell people all the time, when they say, I don't know what to do, I'm so confused. I'm dealing with all this religious trauma in my life. And I just, but I think that there's something sacred out there. I said, just close your Bible. Don't read it. Don't go to church. Like I'm the opposite, take a step back and encounter God. Ask him who he is. I woke up the other morning with the story of Moses. He's 40 years married a Midianite, I think. Midianite, or I don't know, some other tribe. And he's working for his father-in-law. He's shuffling around in the dust with some sheep, probably worshiping gods. And he sees a burning bush. And he walks up to it, and a voice speaks to him, and then he takes off his shoes. He grounds himself, and he says, "What's your name?"
Just want to make a 10-minute countdown. Kind of out into the ether here, so we're all kind of like starting to land the plane a little bit. Sherry,
I have one comment.
Yeah, please, go for it.
I'm going to make this my closing comment a little early because I need to get back to the grind.
Okay.
My former point was to try to bridge that place and like keep that paradox open. But then it just sort of like made me aware that then there's like a paradox within a paradox, and it just it does this. We're back to the navel here, right?
We're back to the navel, brother.
Yeah. So I'm all about it, and I get it. And the last time you were doing the stream, Rigel, that was one of the things I was talking about. What Sherry was saying is that from God to Adam to Eve to Christ is like, this is more paradox in that particular in which we have unity. But also there is in this particular world and in this fallenness, in the place where the disobedient manager can be commended for his shrewdness, and the focus is not on his dishonesty. That's a place in which who we are as sinners, as people who need mercy and who need forgiveness. Like that in itself is a paradox that we don't have that particular, or we can't even like really understand the particular. Sometimes that we have to understand what the shadow is to know that it's not that light is also not shadow, right? There is no darkness in Christ. Even the darkness is not dark to him. And that's kind of where my mind was going, is trying to keep both ends of that paradox open to highlight your comment about the dance, because I really like that, the perichoresis analogy. It's a beautiful thing. So that's it for me. And I really appreciate the time.
Thank you for coming, Cody. I wanted to respond to Sherry and just say, I love that you went to Adam and Eve as your example, because it's like a living example that we're all kind of a part of. And what it makes me think of, see, Cody, is this. And Luke, I want to like hear more of Luke's thoughts on this, but Luke brought up the toroidal shape. In like one of his recent streams, he was talking about the toroidal shape. And I think about this all the time when I'm at liturgy. I think of this movement of one becoming many. Let's just stick with two. So one becomes two. Right. So here's the 0 point. This is the center of the toroidal magic making. One becomes two, goes through life, or maybe it goes like this. One becomes two, goes through life, and then we bring it back and offer back to the one. When we say thine own of thine own, we offer unto thee in behalf of all and for all. We offer ourselves back into the one, and then it's this like ongoing cycle of unity, of distinction, diversity, back into unity, into diversity, into unity, and it's like this ongoing. It's like a sexual act, because then Adam and Eve, they make they have their children.
And the end game is a marriage supper.
Yeah. And so I somewhere in one of my profile bios, I have a line about like how I define myself as, dancing between Eden and Eschaton. Mm-hmm. So I'm somewhere in the middle of this dance between one becoming two, and then two becoming one, and one becoming two, and two becoming one. And I don't know if that's ever going to stop. Maybe that continues into eternity. Or maybe I'll have a better understanding of it. I don't know. Terry, what do you think about all this? I feel like I've gone I'm like swimming somewhere outside the cosmic navel. I think I see it like somewhere at the end of the pool, but like there's no pool. It's just, oh, you're muted. You're muted. You're muted. There you go.
I thought what you just did was beautiful, and you threw me a little because I thought you were going to go into the polarity infinity thing. So you just redefined that for me in a very nice way.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
The infinity symbol, though, is more like a dance.
Yeah. But it's also, I mean, the infinity symbol is, that's a whole other conversation we need to get into, but we only have 3 minutes left. Okay, why don't you guys leave us with something?
I'm going to read a poem.
Please. Thank you.
I selected a David Whyte poem that is just so beautiful, and I'm not even sure how it's going to resound or resonate with what we just talked about.
Well, Sherry, yours is going to be a much better ending than mine, which is with a little promo for everybody to come on Thursday to my open Zoom with Bishop Thomas. Hear about the 6 loopholes in fundamentalism.
6 loopholes.
Cool. Okay.
Right, thanks, Terry.
This is a poem about the courage to finally say yes to life. There is a faith in loving fiercely the one who is rightfully yours, especially if you have waited years and years, especially if part of you never believed you could deserve this loved and beckoning hand held out to you this way. I'm just going to say one thing and then I'll read it again. This doesn't have to be romance. It doesn't have to be a romantic love. It can be anything that you love, okay?
Okay.
There is a faith in loving fiercely the one who is rightfully yours, especially if you have waited years, and especially if part of you never believed you could deserve this loved and beckoning hand held out to you this way. I am thinking of faith now, and the testaments of loneliness, and what we feel we are worthy of in this world. Years ago in the Hebrides, I remember an old man who walked every morning on the gray stones to the shore of the baying seals, who would press his hat to his chest in the blustering salt wind and say his prayer to the turbulent Jesus hidden in the water. And I think of the story of the storm and everyone waking and seeing the distant yet familiar figure far across the water calling to them, and how we are all preparing for that abrupt waking and that calling and that moment we have to say yes, except it will not come so grandly, so biblically, but more subtly and intimately in the face of the one you know you have to love. So that when we finally step out of the boat toward them, we find everything holds us and confirms our courage. And if you wanted to drown, you could, but you don't, because finally, after all the struggle and all the years, you don't want to anymore. You've simply had enough of drowning, and you want to live, and you want to love, and you will walk across any territory and any darkness, however fluid and however dangerous, to take the one hand you know belongs in yours.
Thanks, Sherry. I
Yeah.
love that line, the turbulent Jesus hidden in the water.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Sherry, thank you for kind of calling me to the mat a little bit. I have all these.
Really, I just, if I don't understand something, because I
Yeah.
usually can feel when someone is, not really getting my vocabulary.
Yeah.
And I think that we lost each other at the word collapse, because collapse can be reduce something down. And for me, collapse is a fall into. It's a heavenly body that, like a shooting star,
Yeah.
fills you up. Okay.
It could be a kenosis as well.
Yeah. And I do have some thoughts on, this Torus symbol. Can I
Yeah.
just say this really quickly?
Yes. And we can pick back up on it next time because
That'll be fun.
I want to know more.
My sister told me about a ritual that First Nations has in her community. So they put all the children in the center, then they put the elders, and they're circles, and then they put the women, and then they put the men. Okay, and this is, the children are the future, the elders are the past, the women and the men are the now. Okay, and actually they're considered eternal. And I said to Tracy, if you took that image and made it 3D, pulled it up from the center, it would be a cup. Which is what you mentioned when you mentioned, what is it the priest says?
Thine own of thine own.
Thine own of thine own. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is this, it seems like a circular, eternal, which it is, but it's also a cup, Rigel. It's a cup. It's the Grail. It's the cup in the Garden of Gethsemane, right?
Oh God, Sherry, we have to continue this next time because, okay, I want to know more. Multiple world streams are coming together right here that I need to, Torus as cup as Grail. Okay.
As future, past, and present, which is timelessness. As children, elders, and men and women who are one. Without oneness, there is no future. Children are the world to come.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. I hope we remember to come back to this because I want to know more, and we need to get some illustrations up so we can be looking at things, talking about it. Sherry, Terry, how did an hour and a half just zip by in a blink? It felt like a second. We're we're doing stuff with time and space here in the Cosmic Navel. I'll be frank with you.
Amen.
Okay. Such a joy to hang
Nice
out
to
with
be
you.
with you, Terry. Really enjoy it.
Good to be with you again too, Sherry.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
All right.
I'll see y'all later.
So
Yeah, all
long.
right.
Bye.